Okay, I'll start again. So a very warm welcome, Smriti, to you and to all our contours and the new guests who have joined in today. So many of you are contours here, but for the others and for Smriti, I would like to introduce Contour Life. So Contour Life is an integration of quantum sciences and spirituality. And it's a path, especially for today's chaotic times. The founder is Shiva. Shiva, are you here? Able to turn on your camera? I think. Okay, maybe he will turn on in a while. So this path was channeled by Shiva. And this is a path of heroes. We don't have followers here. We are helping everyone discover their unique potential, celebrating it, finding opportunities. We really function as one to find opportunities for each other, celebrate each other, and be a catalyst, because this is also the place where you get triggered the most, because in a close community is where you find your blind spots. And we are authentic and loving enough to tell that to each other and to learn and evolve. We also have one of the reasons I was so excited to invite Smriti, in addition to being an amazing artist, she also has a very contemporary, relevant take on the gods and goddesses. In Contour Life, through Shiva, we have been witness to a goddess being born also. And, maybe a longer discussion on that some other time. But we also have, one of the highlights has been to connect to the vibrational fields of the devas and devis ourselves, and to experience how they are relevant in this time. We have a whole project of 84 Mahadevs that is headed by by Atin, under the guidance of Shiva. And there we go into the 84 dimensions of consciousness of Shiva, and we observe our own patterns related to it and dissolve those patterns. And so I would like to formally introduce Smriti. First, I would like to thank Weber, because Weber, he sends me, whatever he finds interesting, he'll send to me on Insta. And he sends Smriti's art. And I was like, okay, there's something here. I need to explore this. So thank you, Weber. And now for the formal introduction for Smriti. Give me a minute. Okay. So Smriti, first of all, your name is so poetic, like Smriti Gargi Ishwar. I don't know if it's your taken name or it's your given name, birth name, or you've chosen it.
No. My parents chose that name for me. Yeah. My birth.
Wow. Yeah. Because Gargi was such a, this is so unusual to have a middle name like Gargi, and you're going to be talking about the divine feminine, and she was one of the most intelligent, conscious women.
Yeah.
So
I haven't drawn her yet, but I have to draw her. So I got my middle name from my mother. My mother's middle name is Gargi, and I got my last name from my father.
Wow. So she is an artist based out of Bangalore and Delhi. She studied at the Baroda Faculty of Fine Arts and at Chitrakala Parishad briefly, which shows performances, residencies, and fellowships, traveling to Berlin, Budapest, New York, Cochin, Delhi, Hyderabad, and Mumbai, and hopefully San Diego in the near future.
I love that.
And we have a very famous Balboa Park with tons of museums and art exhibitions. So let's set an intention that you visit there. She's been collaborating with designers, artists, performance artists, and so many others. I even saw that a clothing line maybe with Ritu Kumar, so I saw something like that. And her photography work has been published both in India and Philippines. She's also a board member of Art and Social Structures, an international NGO run and funded by artists that believe that art is a building block of all social structure. She's also the creator of Sister Misfortune Tarot. So this is amazing. Smriti, the stage is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I just get into it because it's quite extensive, my work. So yeah, so I started to do the goddesses some time back, and I've been doing goddesses for years now. And essentially, the idea was to kind of look for more remote and untold stories of goddesses, because there are tellings and there are tellings in Indian mythology, and people often ask me which one is real, and I have always had to tell them that both are real, all five are real, because all those versions have been told at different times, right? And usually with the telling, you can tell who might have told that story, because the winning team always tells the story. So like, who might have told the story and what did they acquire by telling that story? And sometimes they'll change stories because they're it wouldn't have kind of worked for their narrative, right? So from what I've done is I've gone back to really old tellings, where the divine feminine has been kind of less tied down, and they're kind of more, the stories are more complex, right? So I had done that, and the stories were out there, my art was out there, and I'll share my screen soon and you guys will see my art. But the stories were so rich that I wanted to find another way for people to interact with it. And a lot of these stories are matrilinear, so they're also kind of mostly oral stories that are performed in different parts of India, right? So these aren't even written down. For instance, like the Vedas are written, but there are all these other tellings that come from other groups. For instance, in Bangalore recently, I went to a temple for Draupadi. You will not see that anywhere else. Here she is considered a goddess, right? So like that, there are always going to be less known stories about goddesses. And the idea was to be able to bring these stories out, because the power shift that happens because of stories is very, very potent. And there's a very good reason why old stories should be retold. But I wanted another way for people to be able to interact with my work. So I also created a tarot set. And the tarot set essentially allows people to know more stories and engage with more stories. And the beginning of the tarot set was based on this custom that used to exist in India, where the Ashwamedha, which is when a king allows a horse to roam for a year, right? And for that year, the king, in fact, stays back in the palace while the horse roams, followed by a whole army to take over new lands. Where the horse goes, the army goes, right? So, but in the palace, everybody knows that at the end of this year, this king is going to be far more powerful. Because if he's doing the Ashwamedha itself, he's at the brink of the next level of power. So for a year, they tell him stories. And these are like earlier versions of the Mahabharata or the Ramayana and everything. These are old versions of those stories, prototypes of those stories. So they tell those stories so that this king, it becomes a better human being by the end of it, so that he can be a more powerful king and be and have knowledge about humanity by then, right? So mythological storytelling in India is not so much about the way it is with Western tarot, where it was a storytelling medium, after which it got linked with the occult. But with these stories, the link is very different, because the stories mean many different things. And the birth of these stories, as you'll see, for instance, the idea of fertility is very different in Indian mythology versus Western mythology, right? So in that sense, I wanted to kind of be able to talk about Indian goddesses and make that a tarot set. But no matter what I wanted, I realized that the tarot set is functioning on its own, because I was more not interested in it being predictive of the future or any of that, right? I wanted it to be because these stories changed my life for the better, and I was just hoping they would do the same for everybody else. But strangely enough, the stories themselves have their own power. The tarot set itself has its own power, and it has turned out to be interestingly predictive, and people engage with them at many, many different levels. So that's essentially the tarot set itself. But what I will do is I'll run you through my goddesses, and I'll run you through a few stories so that you can see the appeal of these stories and why I drew them the way I did. For my stories, I have used an Art Nouveau style. One second. Can everybody see? So this is studiosmoo.in. You can always visit it. And there's also the tarot page also on it, and I'll share that soon. Yeah. The tarot set will be slightly different, and I'll share that a little later. But these are the goddesses that are in the tarot set. And I will kind of explain. I'll just go into the stories of a couple of goddesses to talk about. So Kali was a very kind of interesting goddess, and in fact, I've drawn her twice already, and I plan to draw her again, because Kali has many different versions of her that are there, and the Devi itself has many different versions. But what's interesting about Kali is that there's a very old version of her where she is the mother of the tribe. Her temples tend to be in caves, and she's very closely tied up with nature, right? So when we go in that direction, we are going into the feminine, which is essentially nature, because in Indian mythology, there is Purusha, male, and Prakriti, female. So when you go towards the feminine, you're essentially going into nature. While if you go with the Purusha, then that is the mind. So you'll always see this tussle between male and female, and the mind and nature, right? And that's always, in the best situations, they work together, and in the worst situations, they work against each other, right? So with Kali, starting off with Kali allowed me to see the basic crux of what builds Indian mythology and what exactly happens. So when I go to the Devi also, you'll realize that there were different versions of her and how Shakti works. Shakti is different again. So we'll go through how these goddesses changed depending on how the tellings changed, and over time how they changed. So Kali is like pre-Aryan culture coming into India. This is way before. This is Dravidian. You'll find her in tribes. You'll find her everywhere with different names, but she's one of the oldest. Yeah. So Lakshmi again. Now, Lakshmi is a goddess who we've associated with wealth and with prosperity, and that is really the telling of Lakshmi, right? But when I went looking for stories regarding Lakshmi, and there's another goddess called Palomi, and that's when I got into the story. Palomi is another name for Lakshmi, and that's her childhood name, right? And most people know Lakshmi as a goddess who's in the heavens and who is capable of giving you all kinds of wealth. But when you go back to the early pages of the Rig Veda, you will see that there is Palomi, who's the child version of Lakshmi. And she is in fact an Asura, and she comes from the other land. So this constant battle between the gods and the Asuras was in fact, and Asuras are also children of Brahma, right? And if you go back to the early tellings, they're not colored as villains or anything like that. They happen to be a different sort of being. They happen to hold wealth within the soil. That's what their wealth was. So Lakshmi, leaving her, she had three fathers, Palom, Briju, and Varuna, and she left them and she moved towards the heavens, where her dazzle began to show, right? So and we only know from that point onwards, which is heaven onwards, right? Which is the next part of the story. But we do not know the early version of her story, where she had three fathers, and she's an Asura. Again, that's not discussed at all, because we think of Asuras are bad and gods are good. So essentially, the Asuras and gods would fight every year, and this is why it comes around harvest season, where the gods fight the Asuras to release the wealth to us. And that's during harvest season, right? And so, being human, we obviously side with the gods because they're going to release the wealth to us. While Asuras were not necessarily bad people, they just happened to be extremely opulent and very rich, right? And the gods were the ones who fought them to be able to release that wealth to us. And Lakshmi was that wonderful goddess that traveled away from home, and she went into a new space and she dazzled there, right? And she made kings, and she essentially, she's a maker of kings and empires, because that's what she is prosperity, right? So in the card, when in the tarot card, when one pulls the Lakshmi card, it is to understand that there's always going to be movement in our lives, and that movement, especially when it's a leap, that there is a certain when one gets out of one's comfort zone, and even if it's not a geographical leap, it can be a leap from what we understand as home, and that leap, what that means, and what the dazzle that comes out of that kind of leap. right? And so the Lakshmi, and you'll also see the Palumi card. And but interestingly, Lakshmi, the first time I drew her, I only drew her as Lakshmi and Alakshmi. There's a twin sisters of Sister of Fortune and Sister Misfortune. And that's why the series got its name called Sister Misfortune. Once that card comes, in fact, let me go back. I think so Lakshmi and Alakshmi, right? So in this one, you see the sister who is the lesser known one is behind, right? And but in early mythology and in early Vedas and everything, you'll see that there was an understanding that with fortune comes misfortune. You should never divide the sisters, that they go together. And that's why everywhere we have the lemon and the chili by the door, and that's for Lakshmi, because she likes those flavors. And we make sweets inside the house, in the kitchen, so that Lakshmi comes all the way in, while her sister is satisfied at the door. So she doesn't come in. So misfortune doesn't come into the house. But whatever this thing is, it comes from a basic understanding that you never divide the two. You understand the holistic nature of being fortunate, that you understand that misfortune comes with it and how to be able to deal with it. And you don't always just aim towards fortune and have a very unhealthy relationship with misfortune, which is what happens, right? So when you go back to the early tellings of these stories, you realize that they're far more evolved and so much more enlightened in so many ways, regarding wealth or regarding spirituality and all of that. So this is Aparna, and this is actually an interesting card because in a way, and it's the most unlikely love card, because Aparna essentially is Parvati, and Shiva had already lost his first wife, Sati, and he had kept the world out after that. And he just kind of went into tapas, and he broke away from the world. While Parvati was born as a princess to the Himalayas, and she knew that she wanted to marry Shiva, but she knew that Shiva was doing tapas. So she goes in as a child, even she's a very young woman. She goes into the forest where she does tapas with all the other rishis. At that point, there weren't pujaris yet; it was all rishis only. And with the rishis, there is a very, like, our understanding of meditation now is very Buddhist, which is essentially kind of finding oneself, and there's very peaceful interaction with the world around us as far as meditation goes. But back in the day, meditation was quite powerful. It was a way of wielding power. So in that sense, people would do, like for instance, they would do meditation, and they would start garnering energy, right? And the gods always got really uncomfortable if human beings were doing tapas, because they would garner energy, right? So the gods would either send beautiful maidens down so that they can distract the men who are doing tapas, or they would come down themselves and say, okay, stop doing tapas. What do you want? You have a boon, right? They were breaking the tapas. So with Aparna, what was really Aparna meaning Parvati, what was nice was she was not doing tapas to garner power. She was doing tapas to reach out to the man she loved, right? And their whole meeting of love happened in the mind, right? Between each other's mind. And the idea of tapas is something that is so powerful that it actually has an effect in the real world. And all the other rishis realized that this little girl, who wasn't their goddess yet, right? This little girl was doing such powerful tapas, and they named her Aparna, which means not even a leaf, because she hadn't eaten anything, not even a leaf, right? That's what Aparna means. So, and Shiva opens his eyes, not because he is scared that she will take away the power like the other gods do. He opened his eyes because he wanted to give her his power. And that's why this story of tapas between Aparna and Shiva is dramatically and completely different from any other story about doing tapas and being able to reach out to the gods. Because otherwise it's quite transactional, and it's like, okay, I've done tapas and now my god has appeared and I'm going to ask for something and you're going to give it to me, right? That's the idea of boons and curses, and that's what a lot of life pivots around. But with Aparna, you see that there's a very gentle, loving side to tapas, and how two gods reached each other in their minds. And I think that that's so wonderfully beautiful as a story, to talk about such a complicated love, which in fact is quite simple if one looks at it, but it feels so alien to us that, these minds only met in the world of tapas, where everything recedes into the background and only one light is essentially focused on. So this essentially is a love card. But the love card is about the meeting of two minds. There are different love cards. There is Radha. There's also, you'll see, there are other cards. Shivakami is another goddess who essentially is only paired up with Nataraja, meaning she's only paired up, again Parvati, but only paired up with a dancing king, a dancing Shiva. Because normally the Devi is the one who makes the move. She's the one who is active, while Shiva is in fact passive in that sense between them, that he does not make the move towards her, she makes the move towards him. But their relationship is like that, and she's always the active one, right? But when Shiva becomes active and when he does the Tandav, he destroys and makes universes. So it's a very, very powerful dance. And Parvati is then the only time she's the still one while Shiva dances. And that's a very kind of a more unique relationship between them. Doesn't happen very often. And she's the only one who can stay still and calm while he can actually dance, where essentially he shakes reality completely by doing that dance. And the Tandav actually has a story of Shiva and dance, comes again in another part where Shiva meets Krishna. Again, this is Parvati and the story of Ganesha, which I think is more popular. But people never drew Parvati and Ganesha by themselves because there was this awkwardness about Shiva not being really involved in the creation of Ganesha, which actually he is. But Ganesha is completely made of Parvati because Parvati wanted children, and Shiva thought, people want children if they are mortals. Like, that's something only mortals want. We are gods. Why do we need children, right? And you can see, like, most of the gods don't really have children. But Parvati, because she's a goddess of creativity and creation, she was very invested in having a child. And she had to kind of get into the driver's seat about that and create Ganesha from her own skin. And essentially, when she created Ganesha, he didn't have an elephant head. It was a beautiful little boy. And she created him, and then she said, you have to stand guard while I have a bath. And then the little boy stood guard, and then Shiva came home, and the diligent new son, he was very kind of keen on his mother being protected. So he stops Shiva and says, you can't go in, because you're not allowed. And Shiva has no patience for this. So he just cuts his head off. And of course, Parvati sees that, and she is so appalled because she's like, you didn't want children. I finally made my own child, and now you came and chopped his head off, which is so appalling to her. So she then turns back into Kali and threatens to destroy threatens to destroy all of creation. And Brahma, who's the God of creation, was invested too much in it, runs and tries to stop this quarreling couple and says, listen, you can't fight about this to destroy creation. It's not fair, as I have created so much of it. So he stops them, and then Shiva by now is sort of compassionate because he sees his wife who's completely torn up. And he says, okay, go north till you find the first animal and bring its head. And he brings an elephant head, and Shiva places it on the boy's body and breathes life into it, and thereby making Ganesha this unique god with an elephant head and a human body. And again, it's kind of parental love, but it's a very complicated way of telling a story because, again, Parvati and Shiva don't really share children. Like Kartikeya is Shiva's child with somebody else, and Ganesha that's the strange kind of parents. So what is nice is because when you look into mythology, you'll see this kind of diverse understanding of what family means, or diverse understanding of what having a child means, or how the gods look at this idea of having children. So these characters become very interesting, and they're not the same old kind of, because the versions we hear are so simplified because nobody wants to ruffle anybody's sense of reality, that we only tell certain kinds of stories. But if you go in, you'll realize that these gods have many problematic sides to them, many enlightened sides to them, and in fact, really, really wonderful characters. And in fact, the idea of drawing these goddesses for me was to kind of break this idea of Devi that we have, where women are constantly put in the pressure of being Devi-like, which is quite hard. But if we really look at what the goddesses are like, they're in fact like human beings. They're not apart from us at all. So it was a kind of mystification in a way. where we don't leave them, I didn't leave them as deities, but I made them more human. And what was wonderful was that there was enough mythology to sustain, there was enough mythology to substantiate that claim that these gods are extremely human. This is Yamuna. I will skip to the ones that there are tarots for. Gram Devi. So this is an interesting tarot. For the tarot, for the tarot set has the goddess and has another card that means her. And the other card is turmeric, because turmeric has a very, very nuanced relationship with women and a very nuanced relationship with the goddesses. The Gram Devi is a village goddess, and you'll find many different Gram Devis, many, many different all around India. And but most of them have certain things that are familiar, which is essentially many of them are just a head that is outside the village, because they look at the whole village as the body. And usually the Gram Devis do not have temples or priests. They connect directly to their worshipper, which is again very, very mature in a way. And Gram Devis are taken care of by the women in every village. Right? They come, they clean her, they put turmeric, they leave bangles, they leave saris for her, and they take care of Gram Devi, right? But annually, there is a festival where the whole village takes part, and they come and essentially apologize to Gram Devi. And the apology is that we are sorry that we chopped the trees. We are sorry that we de-weeded your soil to farm. And we're sorry we fenced your body, because that's what they do. They fence the ground so that they can gain from it. But in that day, they apologize for that gain, which I think which is such a beautiful way of being tied with the earth, right? And being able to understand what you're taking from it all the time. And on that day, certain communities will have a blood sacrifice to revive their mother, rewild their mother in a sense. And some communities just create feasts. And that day is kind of a day of praise and apology, and kind of giving her the energy she needs, that they can go on, right? So, but again, it's such a wonderful thing that we have that we have a goddess that we can apologize for farming. I mean, let alone the kind of things we do with soil and soil these days. But imagine that back then there was already a culture that apologized for deforestation, and that is so supremely nuanced and so timeless in that sense, Okay, you have to tell me when you need me to stop, or if you have any questions or anything, because otherwise I'll keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. So, before you get, I want to interact on a couple of points. So
Yeah.
first of all, I loved the Ashwamedha, because everyone is familiar with it, but how storytelling had a part in it, and how stories that was a beautiful take on, and it makes sense because, even the whole Mahabharata was recited like that before the, not the ancestor, but the great grandson of of the Pandavas. He was going to do the Ashwamedha, and this whole story was retold. So
yes, exactly.
the power of stories to awaken consciousness, to make you more conscious, make you more aware, to channelize those energies, because there is a lot of power that happens in Ashwamedha, and power corrupts, and really how to increase the consciousness. So I enjoyed that. One of the things you said, that you love bringing in the untold stories, through your art. And one of the stories that I wish in future times you will have the time to look at is the story of Ma Sulochana. Ma Sulochana was the daughter-in-law of Ravan, and she was the daughter of Sheshna, and she was married to Indrajit. And these vibrational fields, they evolve with time. These people also, in different dimensions, they are also evolving. And we have her story. That story is known to many in Quanto life, because we've seen it happening. But after she got established as a goddess, we have experienced her essence, and there have been many miracles or transformations because of her.
I see.
So that's a story I would love for you to hear sometime.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, I will post Shivo's audio on that, on Ma Sulochana, and let's see, because we have not had we've had some people in Quantum Life who have kind of tried to draw her, but we don't have an actual image of her yet. So
Mhm.
it'd be wonderful if an artist, we're always like in this intention that, people experience, and everyone sees her differently, right? Everyone
Yeah,
has their own
yeah.
experience. Another thing is about Ganesha. The Ganesha story is again a very important one to Quantum Life. We Shivo and we have had our own understanding and essence of it, and one of them has been that she is Ma Parvati. Ma Parvati is feeling lonely, because Shiva is off into his tapa and other things, and so she applies that, and it is her subconscious, because that is her feeling at that moment. She's feeling lonely, she wants someone, that longing, and that's subconscious. Like, when we clean ourselves, right, we apply the uptan when we are cleaning ourselves, right? And she, with that, she creates she creates what is Vinayaka, right? And she has him protect, so he has those qualities of protection, of her longing, of being alone. He carries all that, and then his head gets chopped off, so his ego, whatever is all our subconscious, whether it be anger, jealousy, sadness, insecurity, everything has an ego, that gets chopped by the god of consciousness. We become
Right.
conscious. Again, whose head it is a rakshasa's head. It is a asur who has prayed. The head is from a gajasura who has prayed to Shiva. It is his evolution too, because Shiva and Prakriti, they want the evolution of everyone, right? All of them are the children, whether it be a Naga, a Asura, everyone is a child. So, and then when they come together, you see so many yonis. There is Shakti, there is Shiva, there is an Asura, there is Brahma who has intervened. So this kind of, and Shiva always says, Asuras have the worldly wisdom, right? And now that has become, which is why Ganesha is so popular right now. She is probably known across the Hindu religion also. I've seen so many yoga centers and spiritual places in US where Ganesha idol will be there right in the beginning. They will have this big,
He's very
because
popular.
he's very popular, and there's a reason. He understands the world, and we need in these times to live in the world, and yet,
What's
not
interesting is, even post the freedom struggle in India,
yeah.
the government actually pushed Ganesha to unite India in many ways.
And
To
Tilak
unite the
started
south
it,
and the
right?
north. Huh?
Tilak started it. Lokmanya Tilak started this
Yeah.
practice of bringing
Yeah.
in
So in the sense it was used, but even post independence, it was pushed.
independence. And
Yeah.
actually, my family was one of the families who bought it during Tilak time. So we have 100+ years of bringing Ganesha home.
Oh, I
So,
lovely.
and then another thing that we have done is, because you talked about the difference between Western and the Western storytelling and the Eastern Vedic storytelling, you were bringing that up.
No, with regard to
One
tarot only. With regard to tarot only.
Okay, with regard
not with
to
other- only
with-
tarot, but only with
yes.
tarot, nothing else.
Right. But one thing I wanted to share is that because in US, right, there's a lot of kids who are into Greek mythology. Greek mythology and there are a lot of like spin-offs on Greek mythology. Shivu in his book, he's also talked about the difference between what is the difference between Greek mythology and Hindu mythology. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the story. We have the story of Ahalya, right? Similarly, there is a story of of Medusa, right? And both these stories in Ahalya, Indra comes and seduces, or I would not say, because there are all different interpretations. There is either they both felt attracted, or whatever the thing is. At the end, everyone, there is something that has happened, and everyone, even Indra gets cursed, right? Even he
Many
gets
times.
cursed. Ahalya gets, and Ahalya has to suffer, and even Gautam Rishi suffers because he's lost his wife has become a stone, So there is a suffering, there is a lesson for everyone. But then when you look at Greek mythology, you have Medusa, who used to be a priestess of, I think it was Athena, but yeah, she is a priestess of the god, and she is raped by someone. She is raped by someone, and yet she is the one who gets cursed, and the Greek god goes scot-free. In fact, there is this whole story of Perseverus and how he kills Medusa, and you're like, what is the fault of Medusa here? So the thing is, there is a difference. There's a difference where the way the Greek mythology is, the gods are above everything, right? They don't have to face the consequences. They don't have to face the consequences of it. But here in the Hindu mythology, everyone gets to learn the lesson. Everyone gets cursed. So just wanted to bring those things before.
Yeah, especially with curses and boons. It's amazing that anybody can be a victim, gods or humans, and so much of mythology is pivoted and driven by these two factors of curses and boons, right? And what we know about curses, and the one thing we know about curses is they always come true, and so with boons, and the story around that is quite wonderful,
I vote for evolution, because if they did not get cursed, sometimes that is maybe curse and boons are our judgment, is how we perceive it, but really it's a ladder for evolution. Sometimes we are punishing our kid, sometimes we are giving him a reward, but it is for his evolution, right? And he was just reminding me, the law of karma is sometimes absent from Greek mythology. Like, they don't have to pay for that. Here we have, when Vishnu takes, for the good of the world, takes advantage of Tulsi, of Vrinda, he goes through the curse willingly, because it is the karma he has done. Maybe the cause was great, but
which is actually really
your
interesting.
talk is bringing all that in the forefront. I'm like,
they're so great, those stories. That's true. And in fact, it's the gods going through curses is really as important as the curses that anybody else goes through, right? And a curse being a truly cerebral thing, in the sense like what it is that has been created of the mind. Like, that's what a curse is, but it changes everything in reality while being that, So here again, this is Kamakshi, and again, it's a form of Parvati. But what's interesting about Kamakshi, because there was Kama, who had a bow and an arrow made of 5 different flowers, I think mango flower, blue lotus, red lotus, and a couple of other things. And he was told by other gods to go and wake Shiva from his tapas, which means he had to kind of strike him with the arrow. And Kama does that, but Shiva opens his eyes and reduces him to ash, because he just has no patience for it, right? But when Kamakshi comes, she is the female version. Her sense of love is not that kind of falling in love and falling in that kind of pit where in the sense you fall in love. It's not like that. With Kamakshi, you enter a world of love. It is not just love, but it is the willingness to be part of life, be part of samsara, to have all of that within our landscape. And so Kamakshi brings a very different understanding of love, which is it's quite kind of a larger spectrum that comes through her. And again, Kamakshi
is Rati, or is she her own goddess? Like,
she's Parvati.
Like Rati? She's Parvati. Okay.
She's Parvati. Yeah. So that's another version of Parvati. But essentially, this version talks about Kama versus Kamakshi, like what it means with the kind of love she brought versus the kind of love that was there before, right? And Usha, so talking about Greek gods, like you're talking about. So Usha is the goddess of dawn. And again, the idea of Usha was that because there's no temple for her, there's no priest for her, there's no sub-community for her, but she has 30 hymns to her name in the Rig, which is much more than the other gods have. So she's an early god, and the understanding is that she came from a different land with Indra, again, because they seem more like gods that came from somewhere else, where the morning is truly a big deal, versus robust sun gods that we have here in the tropics. The goddess of dawn was quite more subtle. And Usha has so many wonderful things about her, in the sense that she's known for being brash and passing. It means that she is going past us all the time, because that's dawn. Dawn is always transitory. It happens very quickly, it goes past us. So there was always a weird real relationship with Usha, because she comes in the morning and she dazzles us and we blink. And that makes us mortal, because she and her other brothers and sisters or gods don't blink. They have a very awkward relationship with death, so they never blink. But she makes us blink, right? So thereby taking a day from us. So if we get stuck in life and we just waking up, going through our day, sleeping, waking up, going through our day, sleeping, then we miss the point of Usha. Because Usha wakes us up because she's also the goddess of awakening, which means behind her there is another door that if we can find it in ourselves to be able to evolve mentally in every which way, spiritually, that we will truly awaken and not just get trapped in this idea of waking up every morning. And what's beautiful about Usha is that she's always going past us. She's got these twilight horses, 1,000 horses of twilight that she rides, and she goes past us. And she's always riding towards her sister Sandhya, and Sandhya, that means evening. And Sandhya is always riding towards her sister Ratri, who's also riding towards Usha. So these are three sisters who never meet each other, but they keep riding towards each other, creating time. And we all live in that time that they create, like these three sisters. And to me, that's one of the most beautiful early tellings that exist, because this was way before the three main gods, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva came out. They came a little later. But if you look at the early gods, like there's a goddess for forest, there's a goddess of dawn, and they are kind of more, they're early gods, and they're quite special because they're very specific about what they do. And so Usha is like one of my favorite goddesses that I enjoy drawing, because there's something very delicate about her and very subtle about her. And before you know it, she has passed, she's gone. So to be able to understand Usha is to be able to sing for her, to wake her up so that she may wake us up. And also to understand that the amount of beauty there is in something that passes, something that is not permanent, something that's transitory, right? And that's a really kind of special way of being able to look at life and look at the amount of beauty that is always passing, right? So that's Usha. This is one of my favorite stories, which is Shiva as a woman. And again, there are these wonderfully whimsical stories that exist. And there are two versions of the story. One version is that Shiva heard Krishna playing the flute and essentially indulging in the Raslila, and Shiva wanted to go and join them. And but when he comes down, he realizes that men are not allowed into Vrindavan. Only Shiva and the Gopikas. Men are not allowed, and he wants to go in, and he has a wonderful relationship with Yamuna, right? Because when he lost Sati, he came to Yamuna. And because they both are consorts of each other as well, Vishnu and Shiva are consorts of Yamuna. So when Shiva comes, she holds him and she becomes a dark blue because she takes in the pain that he has. And that's why she is remarkably different from other rivers in the Gangetic Plains in terms of color. So he has this beautiful relationship with Yamuna. So when he comes there and he wants to go in as a woman, he goes into Yamuna again, hoping she will sort this issue out. And she goes into Yamuna, and Yamuna turns him into a beautiful Gopika. And he comes out. And as a Gopika goes into, but the way I've painted him is that her in this case is Gopeshwari, which is I've retained the signatures of Shiva, which is the snake and the Trishul and the Damru, because there is a bit of Shiva that's constantly there. And then she goes inside, Gopeshwar goes inside and she dances. And this is Shiva, who does the most incredible dance, right? So all other Gopikas are sort of stunned by how wonderfully she dances. And Radha is instantly jealous of that situation, or at least very aware of this. And then she goes and asks Krishna who that is. And they're not comfortable with, she wants her to leave or something like, so she asks Krishna because she's jealous. And Krishna, who knows entirely who that is, says, that's my teacher who taught me dance, which is such a wonderful way of knowing that the gods taught each other dance and taught each other music, which is so wonderful. And he says, that's the person who taught me dance. You really want me to ask her to leave? And Radha says, no, she should stay. She's a teacher, right? And Shiva stays and he dances. So in the tarot reading of this, there is something so light about it, so simple about it, like nothing, there's no consequence to the story, right? But in the tarot, I wanted to see the true worth of a story like this, which is the lightness and the beauty that there can be in our lives, right? If we can unshackle ourselves from the things that we think are good and bad, or what exists and what doesn't, or or saying, because usually a philosophy will overtake us and then stand guard so that nothing else comes inside. But to stay open and be able to, listen to many different kinds of thoughts, and here it goes as far as changing sex, because Shiva does that, as like Mohini with Vishnu, that they do that they transfer between sexes without it being a big deal. And so it's and it's tied up, that movement is tied up so beautifully with the ability to be happy, or the ability to be happy is tied up with the arts, to be able to dance for Shiva, for Krishna's Raslila, and that to having Shiva, who does the dance of creating life, to Vishnu, to Shiva, to Krishna's Raslila, has a whole other way of looking at life, and as this, and a whole of life kind of changes its essence, like its color changes because they are there dancing and singing. So this is Shiva as a woman, as Gopeshwar, and I only knew of this because I happened to know of a temple of Gopeshwar, and then I realized Shiva was a woman, and then I looked into it, and then I realized even Vishnu does that. He changes sex as well, for different, not even for great reasons. They seem to do it for what seemed like light reasons. Matangi was a goddess I drew very early in the day, because there's Matangi was the daughter. I mean, essentially, Matang, who was a rishi, and he came from a lower caste, and he did tapas. And when I think it was Shiva who came to him and gave him a boon, and then he said, I want to create a goddess who goes across all castes, that everybody worships her, right? And then he gets his boon because he has a child with Saraswati, and they have Matangi. So she's got the Veena from her mother, and she's got the third eye from Shiva and Shakti. She's got her parrot from Kamakshi, and she got all these gifts because she's a young goddess, and she had this aspiration of being across all castes. But of course, the gods don't create castes, we do. So she got kind of sidelined into being the goddess of pollution. It means that she was the goddess that was the healer for all the diseases. For instance, when jaundice or when smallpox came to India, her color changed. In a sense, she became a yellow goddess, and she was essentially she suddenly had neem in her hands. So she's very, in that sense, she's a young goddess, also extremely contemporary and present in many ways. Like, she's still alive in our culture today. And so I wanted to draw Matangi because there is this wonderful cross-caste story that's there that nobody will discuss, because caste is so strong in India that these kind of stories are not discussed at all. So Matangi is one of those beautiful stories that show that this kind of thought existed even before.
Smriti, are you going to pick some cards for us? Like maybe
you'll have to pick, and I can tell you the story.
Nearby?
Yeah, I have my cards here, but I can, like, in the sense I can. Let me stop sharing. Do you want to do that? Should we do that?
Yeah. So maybe for the group, maybe if you want to pick 3 cards for the group, like, okay. And we can just, in our mind, when you shuffle, we just pick 1, 2, or 3. And sure. Maybe that would be the guidance for us. What do you think? Because
absolutely.
we are coming to the end of the session. And what do you think, everybody? Would that
I think that's a great way to wrap it, because I can't go through all the stories anyway. So this will be a good way to do it.
I have to call you again. And I want to tell everyone that Smriti is also selling. I'll post the link. Smriti, can you let us know? Because I know I'm just waiting to come to India, so the shipping is easier. But Smriti,
so I ship around the world. I ship everywhere. So just
but just because I'm coming to India, so she will ship around the world.
But it makes sense to buy it when you're here.
Yeah. So please share the link with me, or you can post it in the group, or you can share with me, and I'll share the link on how to get it. Smriti, does that come with a personal reading? The card buying, does that come? Yeah. So this is an absolutely delightful offer where when you buy the deck, you get a personal reading from Smriti. So it's amazing. So,
and also I'll guide you through how to do your personal readings.
She'll guide you how to do it, and she also has some of these stories written on her website, so you can access it.
That is the link.
And that's the thing. And And so Smriti, share your link or share it with me. You can share in the used group. I'll make sure it is shared across.
Yeah, I shall.
And so now before, and you know, before Smriti goes into this, yeah, we always do this thing at the end of the session where we connect to everything that she has shared so far. Just connect to everything she has said. Any highlights, anything that really stuck to your head, you know, whether it was art, a certain story, if it sparked something in your mind. Because this is a vibrational field. If we access this quantum vibrational field, the vibrational field of this session, we are connecting to everything that everyone has been learning. And now I invite you to write down something that touched you. You can write it on the, if you're in the US group, I invite you to take a minute. We're going to pause everything for a minute and then come to her session again. So take this moment and write on the Zoom chat or in the US group or in the Tarot group, whichever group you are a part of. If you could write, Smriti is a part of the USA group. So if you could write something that really stuck to you in this, I'm going to do it. You're going to spend a minute in that. I'm going to tell what I loved. She was already sharing. And I want to really thank Kaval for this amazing reporting. She came 5 minutes before the session. And I asked her if she could do it because it helps people know what's happening. And Kaval, just love you.
Thank you, Mansi.
Chehra dikha do. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write it on the chat, but I invite I also asked our tarot people that at the end of the session, I was going to ask them in our group that what tarot card do you think Smriti represents?
Oh, I really?
Internal exercise.
That'll be interesting.
So just take a moment, everyone, and write down. Shubho's already written his, and I'm going to write mine. Smriti, we'll just give a couple minutes for everyone is writing down there.
Sure, absolutely.
You can look in the USA group if you want to see what they are, or you can look at it later. I know you've turned.
Yeah, I wanted to look at it later. Yeah. Just
definitely. And yeah, Vinita, but a very good-looking and youthful grandma. There was a comment that it reminds her of like grandma telling stories, but I'm like, this is the cool, youthful, gorgeous.
It is so funny because I'm actually working with the filmmaker regarding grandma stories.
Wow, Vinita.
That is so crazy.
Smriti, if you are planning to come to Mumbai in the next 2 months, please hit me up, okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, I also loved about Gram Devi. So I don't know if you can see the comments on the Zoom.
I can see the first bit of this story. I can see, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now we go into our 3-card reading. So Smriti, if you would like, before you pick up the cards and you show us, let us pick 1, 2, or 3. So shuffle and we'll
Yeah,
just...
so for instance, I've already shuffled and laid it out.
Wow.
Okay.
I just
So
love.
essentially, so I'll go like this and you can tell me when to stop and I'll pick the card that, so one of you will have to drive the car as far as telling me when to stop and then I'll pick the cards. Does that work?
Okay,
Will you
sure.
do that? Will you do that for the group?
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to start.
Okay. Stop. So this is card number 1. So I invite everyone to pick a card or don't show it yet. Are you just
No, I'm not showing.
Yet?
You have to pick 3 cards and a 4th card after that.
Okay,
So
okay.
this is the first 3 we'll have to pick. So
Okay.
I'll start again, okay?
Okay. Stop.
I've broken it up a bit.
Uh,
Starting again.
yeah. Yes. Uttara, I think you had a question maybe after. I thought I saw your hand raised. And,
No, I just wanted to compliment her art. And so beautifully.
Thank you. Okay,
So
we'll do
we
one more.
Yeah, go ahead, Smriti.
So we'll do one more, but take a moment before you pick this one because it's a very different kind of reading, okay? So.
Contour, yes. Yes.
Okay, so I'm keeping that separate, okay? And I'll wrap this up and let us see. This is it. This is your first, second, and third card, okay?
So let us invite everyone to just pick. So on the Zoom, if you could write, are you picking 1, 2, or 3?
No, we'll have to pick 1, 2, and 3 because there's a lot order to it. So we'll pick 1, 2, and 3. Sorry, did you want to do it some other way? Did you want to
okay. So we don't pick.
Yeah.
It is a story for all of us.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So we are not picking 1, 2, and 3. All the 4 cards are for us.
Yes.
We don't have to be satisfied with 1. We
No,
get 4.
we don't.
Okay.
So this is Follow Me. Okay, that's your first card.
I'll
And that
spotlight you. Just give me a minute. I'll spotlight you.
Okay, yeah. So this is Follow Me. Oh, sorry, it's Ulta, but it's essentially Follow Me, who is the story that I told you about Lakshmi, but as a child. So this is about, okay, we'll go one by one. Okay, so that's Follow Me, which is 1. That's your first, which means this is the child in you. Yeah, that's the youthful part of you. And then this is Bhumi, Earth, and that's the pomegranate. That's what Bhumi holds in her hand. And Usha. Yeah. So Usha. So essentially now I'll kind of tell you what is, well, you know the story that is in this, right? That I told you about the Asuras. So in this one, essentially, as a card, it talks about a journey. It talks about a journey which is across your life. It's a journey that changes your life. It's a journey that has a calling on you. In the sense, if you take that journey and if you make that journey, because it will be something that does not necessarily happen naturally. In the sense, even Follow Me, when she made that journey, or Lakshmi made that journey, her people were fighting the gods constantly at that time. But she made that journey. She went up, right? And once she was in the heavens, she met Indra. But Indra was already such a god full of faults. He was constantly being cursed and all of that because he was such a problematic god. And he was losing his holding, essentially. And he was so awkward around Lakshmi because he kept feeling like she came with no reason, she leave with no reason. He didn't know how to be with her, and he kept thinking she'll leave. And eventually Indra's own situation becomes very weak and he stops being the god of the heavens. But when Vishnu comes, Vishnu is the one god who can appreciate her in that way that she needed, right? And that's why Lakshmi stays with Vishnu and they become the king and queen of heaven, right? So there is this idea of travel, there's an idea of a soulmate, but there's also an idea of dazzling away from home that journey away from home causing that dazzle, right? Because when we are at home, we are too close to everything that's us, and we might not dazzle. But once we move away, there is that dazzle. So there is this, as a group, I don't know what you guys think about movement, but this is a very strong card for you, for the group. I think that idea of movement and the idea of going from our space, or what you think of as your space, to another space, and then being able to dazzle there, right? And this one is the mature part of you. The child in you is this, and the child in you is movement, which is great. And the mature part of you, strangely enough, is Earth, which is Bhumi. And Bhumi has a very kind of, the Bhumi story that exists over here in the tarot set is that she's tied up with Sita, right? She's tied up with Sita because Sita's mother is Bhumi. And there is this beautiful thing about Sita, because we always think of, at least Sita has been heavily judged from different points. Either she's made out to be a very kind of person who just gives into everything and has not been able to have the agency to speak her mind or whatever, and she's judged for those reasons as well. But Sita actually, it is when she denies, or she refuses to go through the walk through fire for the second time to prove to her husband that she is that her chastity is in place. When he's asked her to walk through fire the second time, and she has no patience for that, and she says, "No, I will not. You can take like a love and push your children, and you go back to your life. I will go back to my mother, Bhumi." Right? That is the moment we realize that Sita gave us gifts. She gave her family gifts. What we thought we could take for granted were gifts that she gave, and she chose to give them. And she could have always chosen to not, but she gave them, right? So there's a very beautiful thing about gift giving. It's one of the most beautiful actions there are in this world, that we can give gifts. But somehow gift giving is not looked at as powerful. It's almost looked at as trying to find people to love us or whatever. Like, it's almost looked at as a bad thing, almost like you're trying to get something from it. But when you see Sita's story, you realize that gift giving is one of the most spiritual things that we can do, and always have the agency to be aware that you're giving a gift. Not that you want to already prepare to not give the gift later if things don't go your way, but to know that your strength is to be able to give that gift, changes the nature of the gift, changes the nature of the person who's receiving the gift, and everything about that action is very, very potent. It's like, for instance, to know that the earth and everything that the earth gives us is a gift, right? It is not, we should not take it for granted. It is not something that will always come. But when it comes, we have got to learn how thankful we have to be to every gift that the earth gives us, right? And that's the thing about Bhumi, everything about her. And her daughter inherited that from her mother, the ability to give a gift and to be strong in that giving, yeah? And knowing that it's a gift always. And finally, we know Usha. And what's strange is that there are two movement cards. So I'm guessing a lot of people on this group have moved at some point in their life. And again, Usha, as a reading, is that the card Usha is the presence in your life of the second awakening, right? The second awakening is part of your life. That will happen simply because, that is your agency. It can happen. What might seem like things that are just happening, like for instance, Usha's journey every day towards her sisters and her sister's journey towards her, which seems futile and seems like there's nothing concrete that comes out of that, right? Life is full of those gestures and you can feel them. Like even in your own life, it'd be like, okay, that was pointless, or that whole thing I did has no repercussion, has nothing to give me, right? But Usha card is something that reminds you that there is nothing that is pointless. These things that you do and these things that happen always have a point to them. It's just a matter of identifying it, and identifying it will then open that second door of enlightenment, that second door of awakening, which is enlightenment or a higher awakening, right? So as a group, you guys have a higher awakening that is part of you. So that I think is wonderful. I'm glad that this card was picked. Now I'll take the fourth card, and that card is essentially a verb card that rides over all of this. In the sense, it is an agency for these, right? And that is Durga. So that is wonderful. That's strength, and that's a wonderful card to be thing, because Durga is different from Kali and Shakti, who are goddesses of the forest, right? Durga, because they are like goddess of war, the warrior goddess, and all of that. The Durga and Kali and Shakti. Shakti, for instance, Durga and Shakti, for instance, don't have a special place just for us. For them, all of creation is something that they're looking after, right? But Durga is the mother warrior. She has a space for us in our heart. She has a space that aligns with us, and warriors would pray to her so that she's on their side, and so she's the goddess that will go to war for us, and that means that from the forest to the battlefield, she stops to see us, and that's the gesture of Durga, where she acknowledges us and she acknowledges who she's fighting for, right? So as a card and as a reading, it's a very powerful thing, because it's to understand that care, that inner ability and a constant inability to be able to fight for the people we love in a way that's constant and in the way that that's always there. So this is a very powerful card that goes along with all of these cards, which means the ability to care and fight and have the energy and to have that vision of justice, right? And I think that's what Durga is, the vision of justice, which is very, very special. That's your reading.
Smriti, I let everyone share, but I have to share that Durga is a card of Quantum Life because, first of all, our founder was, so I'm just amazed by your reading, because our founder, Shivo, was born on Durgashtami.
I see.
And Durga for us is, because she was a vessel, right? She was a vessel in which all the devas pour down their Shakti. So that is the thing of Quantum Life, where everyone pours on their uniqueness, their special talents, and then we become greater than the sum of our parts. So the whole Quantum Life is created around that concept that when we come together, we are far greater than the sum of our parts.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I am just amazed and blown over that that's the card you picked for this.
I'm glad it's resonating. I hope it resonated.
But I invite anyone wants to share, please go ahead. Let her know. It was amazing for me and very relatable, because especially since I'm going to India and there is a movement, it is a pilgrimage for me. So
it is, of course, it is a pilgrimage for you.
If someone wants to turn on their mic and just say, please go ahead, invite everyone.
Thank you so much. I'm just reading the messages. They're beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you guys enjoyed it.
Venkat here. Can I ask one question?
Yes.
Venkat, please make it relevant, okay? Please go ahead.
Okay. So we talk about elephant god, Narsimha, lion god, Haygreva, horse god. How it is scientifically possible to mix two different human beings? I'm feeling that DNA of the two human beings is disproportionated as per science.
I'm not sure I understand. I'm so sorry. I'm not
think about that.
Yeah. So what he's trying to say is that how is it possible? Like we have the elephant become one with a human. How is that possible? Like, the body of a human, the head of an elephant. And he's saying,
the thing is, the one thing this is my approach to mythology. So I will only answer what it means to me. These stories are told because they're talking about a different way of looking at humanity. For instance, our place in nature. At one time, science thought that plants can't communicate with each other. There was a huge line between what was sentient and what was not sentient, right? That has changed over the years because we understand more about it. So now plants are talking to each other, apparently, right? So the journey of science is an ever-evolving one. 50% of everything that we know in science is disproved in 100 years. So we have to understand that the scientific way of thinking is not necessarily the holy grail. That is a way of thinking, right? And now with mythology, my path to mythology is that it is metaphorical, but more than that, it talks about a different way of seeing animal life, connecting ourselves to the animal world and all of nature, right? The more we segregate, saying we are either more special or that we're different or whatever, that is what has made humanity what it is. We are now in a terrible state with regarding nature because we have alienated ourselves constantly from nature, saying, and of course, that has just been the path, right? But the feminine, the path of Prakriti, which is the divine feminine, that path takes us back to understanding nature in a way that it can feed us and we can feed it. So there, it's not so much about the exact DNA or the path of science, right? The path of science is a very separate thing. And I know as a group, I guess you guys do link science with mythology, but that's not where I come from. Where I come from, it is the power of storytelling, when it reaches us and why it reaches us, and being able to connect ourselves with nature in a very, very, very deep way. So in the sense, we don't kind of preoccupy ourselves with what makes us different, but we preoccupy with ourselves with what makes us part of everything, right? So that's my understanding of it, and that's where I come
Wonderful. Wonderful perspective, Smriti. And even in Quantum Life, of course, we are bridging the we are bridging and we are integrating that, but there is also there are some things that science has not yet caught up to, and there are some things that it is opening up. So I feel that the marriage, the integration is going to enhance both the sides. It's going to enhance mythology. It's going to, because now we are using balls of a pig inside us. We are these stories were told before surgeries were not possible. Now we can put a artificial heart. Future when we may be able to create a head and put on it. So these are the possibilities. These are vibrational possibilities. And I think when they connect, when we can integrate them, great. But there are also times where they will have their own pathways, and in future somewhere they will, those parallel.
I mean, like people always talk about scientific thought as a monolith, but the scientific thought is always something that's ever evolving, ever changing, because scientific approach is like that, right? So it's a very different kind of approach. Like if you look at quantum physics and the idea of Maya, it's amazing what the parallels are, right? So it's like so there is a lot of stuff there. But yeah, I would think that rooting it down to the literal would only give you literal answers. Rooting it down to the obvious will only give you obvious ways of looking at things. But being able to allow for magical realism and being able to allow for something that is truly above us and above our understanding and letting things be channeled is a wonderful way of awakening to different things, and being kind of alive and saying, okay, this doesn't make sense to me. It probably doesn't, but I think that it's a very different path. That's what it is.
Smriti, I have to say that when I hear you talk, I feel like you are sometimes channeling Gargi. I've been thinking that a sharp intelligence like hers, if she would express, what are the things she would see? Because the artists are always presenting, how they see the world, and they're putting it down on canvas instead of words. They are, that's how they are storytelling. And I really see that. I think your parents were very psychic when they.
Thank you. I will tell my parents that.
So anyone has anything, Gargi, sorry, Smriti, I hope you will join us again. I think I would love to hear from you again, and I'll definitely send you Ma Sulochana a story.
Yes, please.
And
yes, I'm very curious. I would love to read that. Yes.
I would. Anyone else wants to share something before we close the session?
Yes, they're typing such beautiful things. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that.
Yeah. And
Shiva,
would you like to say something? Are you available? Are you around? I think. I don't know if he is. Shiva, are you around? And let me see. Okay. Haha. Lata is saying Dil Mange More, you have to come again. And we have two oracles that probably in the next year are going to be created from Quantum Life. And one is on Mahadev, on the different dimensions of Mahadev. Hi, Shivozia. Hi. Hi, Shivo.
Hi, Smrita. It's so wonderful to see you and hear from you. And
Thank you.
so many of your ideas, as Mansi has been representing Quantum Life so beautifully, and she has been telling you that a lot of ideas which vibe,
Yeah.
lot of ideas of yours that vibe with Quantum Life.
Yeah.
And actually, there is a lot more actually.
Yes, of
Maybe
course.
I invite you to explore
Yes.
Quantum Life. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Shiva,
Thank you
maybe
so much.
an interaction, like a interaction between you and Smriti on different. I think I would love that if Smriti is.
What we will do, Mansi, what we will do, we
Mhm.
will pick up one chapter from the book if Gargi is okay with that. We will pick up
Let
one
me
chapter.
give her some. She doesn't know about the book you're writing. If you want to give some,
Yes, please,
Shiva,
Mansi.
you're on
Yeah,
mute.
you
Yeah.
can, yeah. You can just give her some idea. Maybe you express better than I can.
No, no, not like that. But Shiva is writing a book called Aham Brahmasmi, How to Be a Cosmic Channel,
I
being
see.
a cosmic channel. And so this is a workshop that he did for all the people who have already done sadhana. So we had it in March to April, and after many years, he conducted a workshop for maybe for people who are already doing sadhana for a while. And that was about connecting how to connect to the cosmos. And there were so many insights that came from it that it is now being converted into a book.
I
And
see.
Shivo has been, and it has the inquiry of Socrates,
I see.
where every day there was a certain thing being inquired, but also certain thing being channeled. Jiaji, would you like to say something about Aham Brahmasmi? Would you
Oh my
like to?
God, I'm so overwhelmed by Smriti's insights. So first, thank you so much, and also by the experience I've had with Aham Brahmasmi. It has been something that has brought in a lot of opening up for me. I'm sorry about my office background. I must change that. I'm
That's
terribly
okay.
sorry about that. Yeah. So so what we learned was that you have to go through this experience inwards microcosmically. You have to go beyond what you know so far. And when you go between energy and matter, the quantum level of micro exploration, you can identify from your experience, from your conversations, from your dialogues, which is what Shiva was able to channel for all of us. And all of us went through this motion of identifying where is it that we were stuck, that we could not expand. So until you went inward, you couldn't expand.
Correct.
And then this cosmic connection is a possibility only when you understand what is awareness.
Yeah.
To that level. And this inquiry makes you realize that inside of you, this body, this thing, this space, the intercellular space, intracellular space, everything, all the 5 elements of life is embedded within every within, if you could go into that micro level. And then when you look at it from a cosmic level, it expands and expands and expands. And then there comes the realization, like, I am nothing but Brahma. I am Brahma, and so are you.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was like a total magic.
Amazing.
And of course, I'm a big fan of science and always questioning. Great lover of art, trying to see where art and science meet. So for me, it was fantastic. And she was immersed in distilling those conversations of 21 days of Aham Brahmasmi. With nearly 30 people, is that right? About 30, 31 people. This was something that was a magical experience, I would say.
Wow.
So there's a chapter. So what Shiva was saying, we have all these chapters. So every day was a different chapter. So there are 21 chapters. The chapter I was reading, Shivo, was the work you did. That was the chapter number 10, which was about the law of morphogenetic fields, which is, Smriti, that let's say we are in this vibrational field of gods and goddesses. Let's say in quantum life, like we are all connected. Let's say if Jayaji learns something, right? So for example, we have a person called Preeti who's an expert in going into past lives. Okay, so when her talent became known, like that she was very easily, very sahaj way, able to go to people's most relevant past life and to learn. And it's not enough just to go there and go into some glory and to some past, but really what are the lessons there, and how does it play out in our life, and how do we transform? When
Yeah.
she discovered, she discovered that talent, then there were a lot of other people who started discovering that talent in themselves. When one person learns. So today we are having a vibrational connect between what Smriti is and what quantum life is. And here there is something you are also learning and creating. Even though you were the
Yes.
primary speaker, there is a
Yes.
vibrational field you are also connecting. And some of the things are being said that is known, but there are a lot of unsaid things that we also have learned. That
Addressing.
also you have an access to today.
Yes. Yeah.
Similarly,
Yeah.
we have an access to not what you have shared, but also some journeys you have not shared if we are really connecting to you on a vibrational field.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes. I
so
know
we
what you
have
mean by
different
that.
chapters like that. And Shiva said, how do we connect? How do we increase those connections? How do we connect? Because we are like in one little galaxy among like millions
Yeah.
of galaxies. So how do we do all that? So every chapter is on a certain, certain, what would you say, Shiva? On a certain aspect of Aham Brahmasmi, on a certain aspect of, Aham Brahmasmi, on what is the nature of Brahman, what is the nature of true knowledge or intelligence or of consciousness, what is the true nature of that, on different aspects of it. So Shiva was wondering if, Shiva, anytime you want to jump in.
Yeah, I also want to add a little bit about this excitement, and that is to realize that if you were to look at your infinite potential, the realization of Aham Brahmasmi only becomes true when you know that you have to let go of a baggage, the baggage of your imprints, your past, your karma.
Absolutely.
And that let go of your subconscious can only happen when you have phenomenal observation capability that you can build up. And that only happens when you have awareness. And when you have these two elements, and the quantum vibrational fields magic is about how we are able to partner the energies of the superconscious. So between the subconscious, bringing it up forward to a conscious level, and partnering with the superconscious is an infinite potential. So in each of us, that potential exists. So aham brahmasmi, tvam brahmasmi.
Yeah.
So that is the realization and the multiplier factor of partnering and servicing those ideas. So yeah, so that's the magic.
Yeah, and it's also like a play. So even though it's a book of different aspects, it's also like a play because these are human stories. Everyone has shared their patterns. So it is also like a play because and there have been so many people who don't want to make it anonymous. They are okay with being vulnerable and sharing their patterns. So let's say, Kaval has shared a pattern or I've shared a pattern. So many other millions people might be, hundreds of people might be having that pattern. But that is a story that also happens in this. So it's also like a play. It's a book, but there are also real life characters who are sharing and experiencing transformation as this goes on. So I think what Shiva was saying is, would you like to come, be a chapter, read a
Mansi,
chapter of that? Go ahead, Shiva.
Yeah, Mansi. So first thing, it's very exciting for me to see that how everyone is looking at it differently and everyone is interpreting it differently. That's very exciting because everyone's interpretation will open up possibilities for hundreds of thousands of people, for millions of people who think like them. So, and I see this book not just a phenomena of like bestseller for 1 year. I have no intention of getting into that category. this book could be life transforming for next hundreds of years to come, and that's what I'm looking at. So first thing, thank you very much, Jayaji. And we had a take of a scientist and seeker, and I'm sure everybody has their own unique being. Gargi has her own unique being, and she would have a totally different take on it. So I understand 21 chapters may be too much to read, but maybe we'll pick up one chapter if you want to read the
I'd
whole
love
book
to.
and
Yes, I'd love to. I would love to. Please do share. I would love to.
it would be lovely. Yeah, but otherwise you can also go with one chapter. We'll send you one chapter, or if you
Yes.
want to read the whole book, you're most welcome, and we would have this interaction. Yeah,
Yes, I would
thank
love
you
to
very
read
much.
it. Thank you so much. And please do share. I would love to read it. And I'd love to see what is the base on all the stuff that you guys are doing. I'm very curious. So please do share.
Yeah, so whole thing is about discovering yourself as soul.
Mm,
And the moment you discover yourself as soul, everything in your life will change. Everything.
mm.
This is a leap from mind to soul.
Yes. Yes.
And if I tell you the difference between mind and soul, because you were referring about mind, you referred quite a lot. So mind is like the seed, and soul is a whole ground. Or soul is a ground plus climate, and mind is a seed. So the mind is drawing. Just imagine if there was a seed and if there was no ground and climate, what would happen to the seed?
Right.
That's what
Right.
happens to mind when there is no soul. For a seed to flourish, it needs to be in the ground and it needs to be in the right climate. So
Right.
that is the value of knowing yourself as soul. And this is something very common in quantum life. We always discuss. As soul, we are grounded in space. There is a lot of talk about grounding on earth, right? When we say grounding, people experiment and meditations and how to ground on the earth and all. But here is a different level of grounding you discover, grounding yourself in space
Mm,
and the
mm,
real experience of that. When you are in the whole space, when you are connected with every being, then imagine what happens to your mind. If you can connect with every being, you can draw not just from your own experiences, you can
yeah.
draw not just from the experiences you heard, but everybody who had the experiences, they shared, they don't share, you know them, you don't know them, it doesn't matter. But you start to draw from them. That's what the morphogenetic field Mansi was talking about. And that's how we actually look at gods and goddesses.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Thank you.
fascinating. That is really, truly fascinating. And you do this through, and your path is through meditation. And is that the practice? What's the core of your practice?
Shivu, you want to share?
Maybe you can share.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a process called synthesis, and the synthesis process is constantly evolving. I would say it is different than meditation, because in meditation we are basically observing the mind, our mind, but this goes beyond that, where we start observing the space. We start grounding in space. So this has also gone through different levels of evolution, where there was a time where you would observe your subconscious. So not just your mind, but going, not just the mental, but going emotional, going to the psychic, to the vibrational level, to that root cause of things. After that, we started inviting gods and goddesses and imbibing their vibrational fields, involving them in. Then we made this, or rather, Shivo, of grounding in space, not just grounding on earth, but grounding in space, and what that means, how to constantly be at the edge of the known and unknown. And so it is a process. And I think with Aham Brahmasmi, we have again, what we have learned, there has been a new evolution. And because of the morphogenetics, when Shiva's channeling or someone else is channeling, everyone goes, then that's the journey of everyone. Maybe his might have a more influence because of his aura, but everyone's it becomes a part of the collective. So I would say that it's a process that it is a process of observation, And it has gone through many evolutions. And I think with Aham Brahmasmi, again, we felt whatever we had known before, there was like a major leap. There is change that happens like on a daily basis, but sometimes there is a leap. And I think these have been the 3 leaps, I would say. Shivu, is that explaining it? Would you?
Yeah. So, Mansi, I'm loving the way you are explaining, and because I know everybody who experienced. Let's say here we have 21 people, everybody would have their own interpretation of that. And that is the magic of soul. When you are in the world of soul, you have a unique interpretation, and yet you know that everybody's interpretations are different, and yet they are part of the bigger whole. That's what
They are valid. Yeah.
That's why if you are in mind, you will fight. I am right, you are right. But in soul, and if you are in mind, you know your view is unique, and you know the other person who is sharing totally different is also right, because they are the part of the same whole. That is the difference in the world of the mind and the soul. So, like Mansi shared her take. So there are 2 things I want to share here. So one beautiful thing is, you would have seen a lot of invocations of gods and goddesses. In temples, they invite the gods and goddesses, right? And then in the end, they say, thank you very much for coming, and bye-bye, you can leave now. Thank you for coming, right? But in quantum life, invocations are very different. We invoke them, we invite them, and they never leave us. They're always with us. It may be a certain, a vibration of them that has got involved in us, become part of our own aura. Next time we'll invoke, they will become bigger part of our aura. But in none of the quantum invocation processes, we say thank you, bye-bye, thank you for coming. We invite them, but they never go back. They are part of us. That is the first thing I want to share. Second thing I want to share is there's something called truth of the moment. Truth of the moment, that is again a very powerful. You really, you would be amazed if you start to look into this tool, what kind of magic this simple tool can do when you start to acknowledge the truth of moment. So I have explained it. A lot of that is explained in that book. What is the meaning of truth of the moment? And when you acknowledge that, and when you are just present to that, it's a huge leap of evolution. You can live truth of just one moment and you are a different person. Imagine if you can live the life like that, one truth of the moment, and the next truth of the moment, and the next truth of the moment, even without trying to live. It's like you breathe. This is how you begin to live life, like the truth of the moment. Then you would see, you have heard that quote, right? That we are not the humans going for a spiritual experience, but we are the spirits visiting the planet to have the human experience, right? Something like that. That we are spirits visiting this planet. And if you want to really live like that, the truth of the moment is the understanding, which is needed. So I think a lot
Totally agree. Totally agree.
sharing, for interacting, and for being a part of us, for coming here and enlightening us with your talent, your views, your intellect. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And we stay in touch, okay, Shruti?
Yes, absolutely. Please.
Love.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for joining in.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for your messages. And this is such a lovely evening that I've had with you all. So thank you so much.